Welcome to VolleyTalk. Alongside Harrison Austin, I'm Elliot Scully. Joining us today, the head coach of the Pickerington North Panthers, Marci Truex. Coach, how you doing?
Good.
That's good to hear. Hey, this team last year had a great regular season. Probably came up a little bit shorter in the playoffs than you would have liked, but coming back again this year, really great, even better regular season, finishing 20-2. Were you expecting your team to perform to this level in the preseason?
I had high expectations. I knew they were working in the off season to make sure because they had set some goals for themselves this season, and we had to fill in some missing pieces. And you hope those things all come together and work out, and they did for us. And we played with a couple different lineups and have found some that work for us. And just super proud of the work they put in for sure.
Coach, let's take a look at your schedule and we'll go to one of the biggest matches of the year for your team against St. X. You go down to Cincinnati undefeated. Unfortunately, you're swept by the Bombers. What did
Yeah.
you learn from that loss in general?
Um, so many things. It was such a great opportunity, and Coach Ferris is fabulous and um, nothing but a class act. And I really enjoyed being there. And I know the boys enjoyed it as well, even though we were on the losing end of things. But for me, and I think for the boys too, they wanted to play a more challenging schedule with the few games that we had in our schedule that weren't league associated games. And Bill was gracious enough to work something out. Like we tried to do a try with them in St. Charles, and we couldn't get that to work out. So we did singles, but it was a good experience. They have a great crowd. Their media is great. It was an experience. I think the boys came in a little shell shocked. I think once they got out of that, we started to compete. Um, and I think we also learned what it really takes to compete at a high level and to be
Sure.
consistent. Even though it didn't quite work out the best for us, we did have a lot of good takeaways.
Yeah, for sure. Now, in another big test, you swept your way through a quad with Beaver Creek and then regional opponents, Mount Vernon and Berlin. We talked about this throughout the year, Elliot and I, and how much of a confidence booster was this game, and more importantly, that quad for your team in general? That, like you talked about, facing those tougher opponents and knowing what it takes. How much does that help your team in general?
A lot. They had it circled on the calendar, one of the first big tests for us, and they were definitely dialed in. They felt like they had something to prove after last season, and the way we went out. They were, I would say, more determined this year to make the most of every situation, especially against good teams. And I wouldn't say it was maybe a revenge match, but I know they wanted to make a statement, and they were keyed in. And when they are performing at a high level, we can play with anybody.
Second year in a row, you're undefeated champs in your conference, OCC Ohio. How much does it mean to have that honor?
It really means a lot. I've been doing this for a long time. I was talking with Evan Bell from Darby the other night this week, and he was asking me how long I've been at North, and I said, well, it's been open 21 years, so 21 years, and I've been in Pickerington for 28, and started coaching at the JV level since I was here. Started at Pickerington, so I've been around the game a lot and have been through a lot of teams with varying levels of success. And to be able to have a back-to-back OCC championship is pretty special. This is a great group of kids. Several of them have been with me in a program since they were in junior high, so they're kind of close to my heart. And senior night was a little rough for me, and as they most of the time they are my kids. I kind of tease them as like I'm like your volleyball mom for life. They're always going to be involved, and so there's that special bond. But they've just worked their tails off and to improve and to put themselves in the position to do great things, and I love to see that. And they've really matured and grown individually, but also as a group over this past summer. And I know they felt like they had something to prove. And to be able to do it for the first time in school history and get back-to-back championships is pretty awesome.
100%. You talked about Darby. You're able to go to the OCC Challengers. I still think it's one of the coolest matches in the state, or one of the coolest events in the state. And you're able to knock off Darby at Darby in the best of three in three sets. What was that night like for you guys?
My kids are keyed up. I think they took it a little personal because they kept asking, Coach, who are we going to play? And I was like, I was speculating it would be either Darby or Thomas, since they're the other side of the bracket in the region. And so I was like, it didn't matter to me which one. But I think being at Darby, I've had many memories of playing at Darby over the years. And so to be able to take them out on their home court. In that match, I think my kids were calling it the highlight match. I don't know what they were calling it, but right before they give awards. So the gym was packed. Oh my goodness, the atmosphere was amazing. People were awesome. Lots of noise. And when you can play at a high level, and we had some amazing plays happening during that game. And for the guys to come together and get it done, it was next level awesome.
Now, you guys finished off the regular season with a tough loss to a very talented St. Charles team in Division Two. How much was that a wake-up call for you guys to get ready into the postseason?
It was such a good match for us. St. Charles came in and they served us hard in the first two sets. And I think it took us a minute to kind of get our bearings. I don't think we necessarily were looking past them at all. I think we had mad respect for them. But I think they played extremely well. We seemed to bring out the best in people. So that's okay. But I think for them to rally, to come back and to push it to a fifth set was huge. And then to be able to put themselves in a position to win at any moment says a lot about who they are as kids. We had a lot of kids, I would say a couple of our key players that did not play very well that night. And we had to depend on some of our other kids, and they did a lot. And so it really tested their resiliency and their perseverance. And I think they learned a lot about themselves, but also as a team that they're in the fight. And when they put their minds to it and stay together, they can do a lot.
Well, as we look at this postseason, we've talked about this before that, Liberty, the way their schedule's set up, it's really tough to play them. So I don't fault you for that, but it does seem like in your region, all roads are heading towards the Patriots. Do you look ahead at all and try to look at how you might try to beat them, or is it all just focused on the next match right now?
Well, with Mount Vernon coming up, it's all about Mount Vernon right now. They have everybody back and healthy. And so even though we played them and we scrimmaged them preseason, they're going to have a different look. And so we have to be ready for that. I try not to look ahead past any roadblock, because my thing is any day and any time, anybody can be taken out for any reason. And you never know when there's going to be a sickness or something happens with someone's family. You just never know. So you try to be prepared for everything. We did try to schedule Liberty. Dave's schedule was full. So that was a bummer because we did, and we knew that they were the top team in the region going in. So didn't quite work out that way, but it's hard not to look ahead. And my kids have expectations to get to that point. But right now we're just totally focused on Mount Vernon and what's happening tomorrow night.
Well, speaking of Mount Vernon, what do you think needs to happen for you guys to get a win tomorrow?
We have a couple keys that we really have to play to. They run a lot out of their middles. And so if we can serve well and keep them off balance and out of system, we get a good shot. As long as we're consistent and we can play tough and do the little things, we can be really successful. And I know they're going to bring the house. I know there's already talk amongst the kids. And so that's always a fun level of extra things going on behind the scenes. And they all know each other. And so it's not like you're playing with an opponent that you're not familiar with, but it should be a good fight. And I know the kids are up for it.
Should be pretty cool. You get to host it too. That's advantage of being the 1 or 2 seed. Well, hey, best of luck against Mount Vernon. Great regular season. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right, that was Marci Truex from Pick North. Thanks again to her for coming on. So we get into some of the more playoff things now. Actually, before we do that, I want to actually mention there's a conference that opened up, Greater Cleveland Conference. New thing this year. The second conference that we know of, I think, to start up in the Cleveland area this year. Independence and the one with NDCL and the rest of those teams also in there too. So pretty cool to see that starting to pop up in the Cleveland area. I believe Medina and Brunswick were the two teams that were co-champions this year. So that's pretty cool to see. We get in now to the Player of the Year conversation. We saw all the regional Player of the Year stuff come out. In Region 1, it was Caden Whiteside. Region 2, Ryan Keiko. Region 3, Finn Rubin. Region 4, Aiden Berkemeyer. And in D2, Mladen Tague for Region 5, Brennan Shivers for Region 6, Landon Jatsik for Region 7, and Todd Snyder for Region 8. Now, I'll let you take the floor first. Who do you think are the player of the years in Division 1 and 2?
I'd say Division One's got to be Caden Whiteside. Again, a guy that we talked about last year. He was kind of neck and neck with Bentley Meyer of St. X, and Meyer ended up getting the nod last year. But Whiteside, again, when you get him out on the outside, he can just hammer balls down towards the ground. And more importantly, just log the kills in the moment. We saw that last year, the state tournament. He's going to do the same this year. For Division 2, it's an interesting battle because, again, Mladen Tague has been part of a St. Charles squad that just come out of nowhere after a relatively decent year last year, and all of a sudden they're in the forefront of Division 2. So, again, maybe you have a little bit of pairing, as we saw with Cam Hoying last year. Todd Snyder again with Fenwick. I don't know what it is because I saw Snyder a little bit last year when watching the Falcons, and it seems like he's just a penetrable force through the middle. So I think it could go either way with one of those two guys.
Yeah, so look up first at Division 1. First thing I want to say is I was curious in Region 4 whether they were going to go the Aiden Berkemeyer route or the Brady Jones route. Because it actually in the notes, Bill Ferris put like both of them as player of the year worthy. And I think that is a good way to look at it because obviously you have Aiden Berkemeyer running that St. X team as the setter, but Brady Jones was pretty dang unstoppable. So I think either of them could have been good picks. Aiden, obviously, a great one to go with.
Yeah, it's interesting choosing between Berkemeyer and Jones because I think in general that Region 4 just has so many setters towards the top. It's not something you usually see. We see a lot of love towards the outsides, towards the middle. Sometimes you see a libero hop in here and there. So it's interesting that Aiden Berkemeyer takes it, but hey, he's the Iceman for a reason.
I like that nickname a lot. And I like seeing him play. I feel like he's got a good intensity that keeps the guys focused. But yeah, I mean, I think there's no way it's not Caden Whiteside. I mean, we were talking about with Hale in our first interview of the year, like it legitimately could have been him as player of the year last year. And it really wouldn't have been a huge travesty. Again, I do think Bentley did end up deserving it and he got the nod, like you said. And it just seems like whenever Caden Whiteside's on the floor, it just brings this unstoppable force that has propelled Liberty, not solely, but been a big part of why Liberty is such a great team this year. And then so we look at Division 2, again, it is a pretty interesting battle between Todd Snyder and Mladen Tague. I don't have the stats in front of me. I think that's probably what that's going to come down to. Obviously, St. Charles has had the best season in D2. I don't think anyone would dispute that. So just for that reason, I would go Mladen Tague. But I would guess this comes down to who has a more kills per set, who has, more aces, more digs. That's probably what this is going to come down to. I think either guy would be worthy for it. So in Region 1, I think it's pretty much chalk on this top half of the bracket. Liberty will advance over Licking Heights, I think, and then Olentangy over Hannah Lincoln. And then I like Liberty to advance over Olentangy into that regional final.
Yeah, I agree with you on the other side. I think Liberty just is so dominant down the way, and it sets up an interesting matchup overall with Olentangy. But again, I think the Patriots got it.
Yeah, it'll be a cool matchup. I don't think it'll be a close matchup. And like you said, dominance, but also aided by the fact that everyone went to the other side. So we talked with Marci just a few minutes ago about her and Mount Vernon. I think that because this is at Pick North, that home crowd, I just think their momentum will take them through this. I like Pick North to advance. And then Berlin, New Albany, it'll technically be an upset, but I actually like Berlin to advance here. I think we both thought New Albany maybe was seated a little bit high. And I actually saw it in a dispatch article. Jessica Florida, like head coach in New Albany, she was actually surprised to be seated at 3, which I thought was a little funny. So yeah, I like Berlin to advance here. They, kind of had a shaky regular season, put together a really competitive schedule. I think that they're going to get it done and play Pick North. And I do think Pick North will advance to play Liberty in the regional final.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to take Pick North over Mount Vernon and Berlin over New Albany. And it's kind of interesting that we start to see one team that we don't talk about, and it's not in our top 10 in general, get that higher seed. That was the case with Pick North last year, but they showed their flowers and they got their flowers this year. So I think the Panthers got it. And again, you're going to have home field advantage. And I think that is what's going to lead Marci Truex's side to victory. And it's going to set up a 2-1 regional final against Liberty.
All right, over there in Region 2, we actually saw Firestone advance over St. Ed's, which we predicted that to be a close matchup. So kudos to Firestone for getting that done. I like Stowe to advance over them, and then I like Brecksville to advance over Medina. And then I like Brecksville to come out over Stowe, but that'll be a really, really interesting matchup. I was actually talking to Coach Dom, and he said that whether or not Brecksville was the 1 seed, Stowe was going to go after them. So, that whether that's speculation or not, that is interesting. It'll be a really, really close regional semifinal, I'm sure. Big test for either team before they go play probably Ignatius on the other side.
I think it's a good test for Stowe as well because we saw them face Ignatius lose to Foreign. It's probably the reason why they want to go after Brecksville because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they played each other in the regular season. So I think it's just the case of the favorites here. I think Stowe Monroe beats Firestone, and we're going to have Medina fall to Brecksville Broadview. So it's going to set up an interesting matchup, but it's going to be close, I think, because Stowe has been battle tested. But the question is, how battle tested have they been? So in that regards, give me Brecksville.
And then to play them, we actually saw Jackson upset Brunswick, which you definitely called. I think we both kind of talked about Jackson, maybe not seeded as high as they should have been. Sets up an interesting matchup with them and Hudson. I actually have Hudson to advance here because Hudson did sweep them in the regular season, which I think is good enough for me. They're maybe getting back some of that charm from last year. And then on the other side, Ignatius, I don't think is going to have any problems with Walsh Jesuit. And then whether Jackson or Hudson comes out, again, I pick Hudson, but I do think Ignatius will take care of them and advance to play in the regional final.
I agree with you on Ignatius. I think they're just so dominant, and we saw it against Springfield earlier this week. It's the case against Walsh Jesuit. An interesting matchup. Ignatius has always been the stalwart in Division One in the North, and Walsh Jesuit for a long time was the stalwart in Division Two in the North, making the jump to Division One. But either way, I think it's going in favor of the Wildcats. Jackson Hudson's an interesting game, and we've seen these 8-5 matchups before, but I think I'm going to take Jackson just off momentum
Interesting.
itself.
Yeah, that'd be big. It certainly will be a close matchup. Yeah, Jackson got something to prove. I feel like getting that 8 seed. All right, and then over in Region 3, we've got Darby versus Centerville. Centerville actually pulling that upset over Kaufman, which is impressive. They're getting some momentum here late, and sweep no less, and really not a close sweep. Look at that second set 25-10. I like Darby to advance over Centerville. I think that one will actually be closer than people might think than the 2-11 seed might give off. But Centerville's a good team. They went 5 with Elder in the final round of the Centerville Elite Eight. I think it'll be a good matchup. Upper Arlington Davidson, I think, will also be a good match. On this one, I like Upper Arlington to come out, and then I like Darby to advance over Upper Arlington to the regional final.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we got a 4-2 matchup. Upper Arlington, a team that lost in the spot last year to Thomas Worthington. They were the host, the 5 seeds, going up against the 6 seeds. Here they're facing a 6 seed, but they've got a seed higher in the number 4 spot. Centerville is also interesting. Kudos to Troy Brewer's squad. And we talked to him earlier this season about trying to get back to what Centerville was, a perennial team that was making state on the OHS BVA level. That is an 8-team tournament. It's good to see that they're showing some signs of that. But again, this Darby side, we've talked about it. It was the case last year. It's a case now. They're the most potent team in Region 3. Give me the Panthers.
And Chris Jones back, so we'll see how much that's going to affect things. He was playing at the OCC Challenge against Pick North, so another element to that Darby team that could carry them deep in the playoffs. And on the other side of the bracket, Thomas Worthington, I don't think we'll have any issues over Bradley. And then Jerome Beaver Creek will actually be a pretty great matchup. It'll be at Jerome. So, that factors into it, like about an hour drive for Beaver Creek to come and play Jerome. That'll help out, I'm sure, for the Celtic side. This is a Jerome team, I believe, beat Beaver Creek in 5 sets at the beginning of the season. So, Beaver Creek side that a perennially great team, like we said, got the 1 seed last year, was a semifinalist 2 years ago. I don't know. I like Jerome to come out here, honestly. And then I like Thomas to advance over Jerome, and we'll get a Thomas Darby regional final.
Yeah, I think we're seeing another 3-1 regional semifinal. And again, a rematch of last year's regional semifinal with Jerome and Beaver Creek. That one at a regional site in Centerville. So I think the Celtics have it. They just have that potent energy. And I appreciate how they've been able to turn this season because at the start of this year, we were like, I don't know if Jerome's going to have it, right? A lot of their key players are missing. A lot of them have been moved over. They've graduated, but they brought in a lot of newcomers. They're bringing in a lot of new talent and energy, and it's showing. And then T-Dub on the other side, kind of what we've seen, a recurring tale, if you will, of the top seeds that, they did their stuff in the first round. Now you're at the regional quarterfinals. Should be another cakewalk.
Yeah, and then one more comment on Jerome. We're used to seeing these kind of blowout victories in the first couple rounds of the playoffs, but take a look at Jerome over Belmont, 25-0, 25-1, 25-6. That's pretty good. I've never seen a 25-0 set in person, so that's a pretty great accomplishment. And then over in Region 4, I don't think X is going to have any trouble getting past Milford. Sets up a really great matchup, Elder versus Walnut Hills. Kind of a revenge potential for Elder. They got knocked off by Walnut Hills at the pit in the playoffs last year. And then Walnut Hills went on to play San X. So similar situation now. You know what? I actually like Elder to get the upset here. I think they are building momentum in the right way. And, I think we talked about Tommy Tierney, maybe a little bit injured with his shoulder. I think he'll be back. And I don't know. I like Elder to come out and beat Walnut Hills here, despite the loss in the regular season.
You know what? I kind of agree with you on that for a couple reasons. One, with Elder's win over Mason, that's a 5-8 victory. But again, I looked at that game and I was watching it and I'm thinking to myself, this Elder team looks twice as better from when I saw them against some other opponents, right? It felt like when they played Sycamore at the beginning of this year, and we talked about how Sycamore is not the Sycamore they were last year and how that's transpired. But at the same time, I looked at this team and I said, this is going to be a popcorn type matchup because we know what we saw from the Panthers earlier this season and how things are changing. Walnut Hills as well coming in off a 4-set win. So they did drop one set, the third one, 25-21 to Fairfield. Something tells me that this game, it might not go fully in the way that it did a couple years ago when St. X played Walnut Hills at this level. But something tells me it's the same way that Elder's going to walk in to Walnut Hills and get the road victory.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're peaking at the right time. And honestly, speaking on the Walnut Hills 4-set victory, I wouldn't read too much into that. I mean, I think pretty much every high school volleyball team ever plays down, and sometimes that means you drop a set. So I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily go to that as my reason why I think Elder will upset, but I do think that Elder will be able to pull the victory. And then, it's tough to say that San X is going to take a loss here this early. So I think San X advances to the regional final. On the other side, we got Moeller Loveland. And like you said, Loveland getting the 5-set victory over Sycamore in a great matchup. I don't think Loveland's going to challenge Moeller a whole lot, so Moeller will advance. And then really, really interesting matchup, LaSalle versus Lakota East. LaSalle getting the victory in 5 sets over Lakota East late in the regular season after seeding had already happened. So, coming in 3 sets under, feeling like they got it. Man, 5 sets, they're still obviously really even teams. I actually like Lakota East, despite the loss, to get the victory here. Bryant Coolman's side, who was recently named Coach of the Year in Region 4 over Bill Ferris, which was a little bit surprising, but obviously great work to him on bringing this Lakota East team to the 3 seed. I don't know. I think they got a lot of momentum coming to this one. Probably revenge on their minds. I think they'll advance to play Moeller, and I think Moeller will advance to the regional final to play St. X.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the biggest thing with Dakota East is they just have more talent on their side. Grant Seimer's done well, Carson Hill, both of them in the Region 4 first team, making that jump to the area. And again, I feel like something changes come playoff time, right? And again, this was a 5-set victory for LaSalle, the 5th set being won 21-19. So very crazy, a very crazy scoreline indeed. But something tells me Thunderhawks are on. They will lose to the Crusaders. And again, we'll have another Moeller St. X regional final.
3rd one in a row, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now into the Divisional 2 level in Region 5. It's not filled in on the bottom, but DeSales won, so it is again for the 2nd year in a row a all CCL Final Four, Central Catholic League. St. Charles, Bishop Hartley, Bishop Watterson, and St. Francis DeSales. Kudos to that conference again. That's pretty sweet. The seedings didn't necessarily dictate that would happen, but they got it done. St. Charles, obviously, like we said, #1 team in Division 2. I don't think there's any way they don't come out of this region. I've got them advancing over Hartley. On the other side, Watterson DeSales is going to be a great match. League rivals, 3 seed versus 4 seed. I believe they split in the regular season. DeSales with the more recent home win. I don't know. I feel like Andrew Navarre's side, I think they got it. I think they have the momentum coming in at the right time. I like them to upset Watterson and play St. Charles in the rematch of last year's regional final.
Yeah, I agree. And I saw some tidbits of the DeSales Chillicothe game today, and it felt like from the first whistle, the Stallions looked like the better team. It's kind of interesting when we look at the schedule and where all these games are being played, a little bit different from last year. I know with Division 1 regional semifinals will now be home and away games instead of neutral, but nonetheless, I feel like the Stallions are just kind of cultivating that energy, right? And it's kind of what you needed around this time of year. It doesn't matter what happened in the regular season. It's a new season. It's playoffs. And I feel like DeSales will face St. Charles in that way in the final.
Also, we talked about this a little bit too off air, but I really like how they're staggering it so that Division One and Division Two are playing on alternate days up until the regional final. Just makes it, I don't know, like you can watch more stuff as a whole, as opposed to everything being dumped on one day of the week. Region Six, again, we talked about this region. I think it will probably be all chalk up until at least that regional final. I like St. Vincent St. Mary to come out over Carrollton, and I like Hoban to come out over Roosevelt.
Yeah, again, it feels like St. Vincent St. Mary and Hoban. We've talked about it since March that these two teams are just above the pack, right? They're beyond the pack at this point when it comes to teams in the North. So again, we're going to have another St. Vincent St. Mary Hoban final.
Now looking at Region 7, we had St. Villa Angelo St. Joseph are going to play actually Independence upset. It's not filled in there, but they upset Barter Early College. Again, I felt like we kind of saw this one coming, honestly. You looked at the schedules, and yeah, Barter Early College had the better record, but I liked Independence's wins a little bit more. I actually like Independence to keep their momentum going and get the win over Villa Angelo St. Joseph. And on the other side, I like Chardon to beat Berkshire. They have the win over them in the regular season, so no reason they shouldn't be able to get that done again. So it'll be a Chardon Independence regional final.
Yeah, and if you can feel a rivalry brewing, right? It's the
Oh yeah.
second consecutive final in many different regions, and it's the case in Region 7. Again, I feel like Independence, the fact that you can go to Bard, you can get the sweep in that regards, and now you're playing a VASJ side again in the semifinals. I think the Blue Devils are on their way back to the final, and then Chardon against Berkshire. That's an interesting matchup, and I'll harp back to what you said about Walnut Hills and the fact that you don't want to read too much into these drop sets as it was with Chardon against 10th seed Perry. Give me the Hilltoppers.
Region 8, we talked about how much, how many upsets and how much craziness there was last year. A little bit tamer this year. We've got McNicholas versus Chaminade Julian, who did get the upset, as I say that, over Taylor. And then Fenwick's going to be playing Roger Bacon. I like McNicholas to advance over CJ. Now, on the other side, Fenwick versus Roger Bacon is going to be a great matchup. Roger Bacon getting the lower seed, but actually taking the loss to Fenwick right before seeding happened. So I'm not quite sure what the coach were thinking there, but maybe looking at the season as a whole, Roger Bacon thinking that they're the better team here. I don't know, man. I actually like Fenwick to come out and do this. I think that they're going to get their revenge game, and again, it'll be a great matchup. But I think home field advantage will play a role. Having the potential state player of the year on your side for Fenwick could also play a role too. I don't know. I like Fenwick to advance and play McNick in the regional final.
I'm having a hard time seeing Bacon beat Fenwick twice at Fenwick. It's just there's so many things that can go well, go wrong, depending on what side of the ball you're on. I think that I'm thinking back to this Baden Fenwick game from last year because we saw the Rams lose to the Falcons at Fenwick last year during the regular season, and then they turn around in the postseason. Basically, kind of you think about it, they lost that game regular season in 4. Then they dropped the first 2 sets in that playoff matchup before reverse sweeping them away from home. I think Fenwick has it. So give me another Fenwick McNick matchup for the final.
That'll do it for the bracket predictions. Another great week of playoffs. We're going to get to less of the blowouts and more of the really competitive matchups this week. So we're looking forward to that. Hear any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just echo what you said. There's a lot of interesting games this weekend on Friday, going into next week. When we start getting into the regional semifinals, the finals, it's kind of these games where you'll look back at it and we've kind of saw it from last year and a couple of years ago. It's some of these games that we talk about and we'll continue to talk about as the years go by.
Yeah, some narratives that could be assigned to teams for years to come. So good stuff there. For that, this has been Ohio VolleyTalk, and we will catch you next week.